Imagination Connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on YouTube. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it, especially if you love the movies?
Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, Imagination Connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, your evangelist of the imagination, and, of course, the still as yet undefined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett. And I'm once again robcasting at you. You imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations episode number 788, 13 episodes away. Wait a minute, 12 episodes away from episode 800. 800 shows. Couldn't do it without you. You imagination connoisseurs, you members of this Post-Geek Singularity community, the greatest community on YouTube. It's okay. I think about Star Trek. I'll tell you, I think about Star Trek all the time. But you know what? That's just part of what I think about all the time. I think about storytelling. I'm obsessed with storytelling. And I've said it before on this channel a million trillion times. I think that stories are the greatest way that we can convey the truths of human existence to one another. How do we explain what happened in our days? How do we explain our feelings? How do we explain our experiences? We tell stories. I mean, it's not hard to figure out. That's what we do. And in telling a story, why do stories work? Well, they work because they touch upon shared experiences we all understand. Like, for instance, if you say, today I went to the grocery store. We all understand the milieu that is the grocery store. We understand that there's a parking lot there, and there are people with shopping carts, and you have to watch out where you're going because you might hit somebody or back into somebody. And we realize that we have to go into a supermarket that's full of all of these things, and there's different aisles of food, and people are going to and fro, and you have to wait in line sometimes if you're there on a Friday afternoon, for instance, because people are coming home from work and buying food for the weekend. Weekends like today, they're getting charcoal to have barbecues for the Super Bowl. So when you start a story and say, today I was going to the supermarket, we all understand that. So suddenly there is a picture painted. Oh, okay, I understand exactly where you're going. I get it. When you say supermarket, we all have many different images conjured up in our imaginations of what a supermarket is. We've all been there. But make it any place you're going. The doctor's office. You know, you're going shopping at Neiman Marcus, or you're going to buy expensive jewelry at Tiffany, whatever. When you say that, you conjure up all this stuff that we understand. I was driving on the freeway. We all know what it's like to drive on the freeway. We all have these shared experiences. Now, if you're telling a story and you were to say, I was driving on the freeway and I stepped in some mud. Wait, what? You said you were driving on the freeway. How could you step in mud? Well, I don't know. I just, I put my feet down, and suddenly my feet were in the water, and it was dirty and muddy, and my feet were full of mud. Well, I thought you were driving on the freeway. I was. Well, how come suddenly your feet were muddy? See, if you were to tell a story like that, suddenly people are like, zzz, zzz, zzz. I don't know what that means. Well, this is the thing. Great storytelling is a succession of things that are being told to you that you understand, that we get. You know, so when you were to say, if you were to say I'm driving on the freeway and then suddenly my feet were in the muddy dirt, then you're like, wait, what? What? Well, the same is true in a story of, say, motivation or emotion or something. So if you're talking about emotions, you're like, man, I was really, really, really angry because this happened. So I took out my jump rope and I started skipping down the street with a big smile on my face, singing "Good Ship Lollipop." I mean, I guess you could, if you were Louis Buñuel, you could do that in a movie and people would be like, I get it, it's surreal. But for the most part, that was probably a bad example. I don't know where I came. I'm making this stuff up on the fly, so bear with me. But you know what I mean? If someone tells you they're angry, then you expect certain modes of behavior or certain actions and reactions when you hear that. Now, we all know this because we live in the real world. You know, we know that I have a very thick wooden desk right here. We all know what that means. So when you are telling stories, it is very important that whatever story you're telling, you follow the sort of shared experiences we all have living in the real world. You know, I was wearing a very expensive suit and I had an hour and a half walk from where I was to where I was going, and suddenly it started to rain and my suit was getting ruined. And I still had to walk for 85 more minutes. I don't know why I'm thinking these are not good examples, but what I mean is, if you're wearing an expensive suit and you get caught in the rain and your beautiful expensive suit gets soaked, we know that's not a good thing. So if you're telling a story about, you know, you're wearing a nice bespoke Savile Row suit and you get caught in the rain or something, and maybe the rain's bad for that suit, we know what the reaction, the action and the reaction would be. And stories are a succession of that. And when you're telling stories that have an unreality to them, when you bump on details, you're like, wait, what? That doesn't make any sense. Kind of like when Boba Fett wants to return to the Sarlacc pit because he's looking for his missing armor. And you wonder, well, wait a minute, Boba, when you climbed out of the Sarlacc pit and you emerged from the sand way over there, when the Sarlacc's maw was over there, and you had your armor on, I understand you were hallucinating from being digested for 1,000 years, and you might not remember the Jaw was taking your armor from you, but then why would you then believe that you had to come back to the Sarlacc pit with your beautiful fire spray starship and sit over its maw to see if you could see your armor? We're all watching this going, dude, do you not remember what we just saw? We already saw what happened to your armor. Now, I understand you don't know that the Jawas took it, but you did emerge. You don't remember that you emerged out of the sand. Maybe you didn't. You're delirious. You're getting devoured, whatever. I don't know. But do you not remember there were tentacles coming out of and a giant, Audrey 2 maw from Little Shop of Horrors? Did you not remember that was happening? So why would you do something? So Boba Fett is supposed to be a smart guy. When he does something like this, we look at it and go, you're stupid, and we don't understand. Like a rational human being or a rational Twi'lek or a rational Hutt probably would not do the same thing that Jabba the Hutt did with the Slave One over the Sarlacc pit in the Book of Boba Fett. So when something like that happens, if you're a fan of Star Wars and you're a fan of rationality and reason, you have to look at a scene like that and say, Jon Favreau, why did you write this scene? This scene doesn't make any sense at all. It strains credulity and logic. And why am I watching a character that I've loved for 42 years do something monumentally stupid? Now, when you watch a succession of these kinds of events in a row over 7 episodes, or maybe 5, because Boba Fett was barely in 2 of them, it's an accumulation of bad storytelling. Now, I think this is what we as fans, we grow accustomed to good storytelling. When you watch the original Star Wars and you watch Empire Strikes Back, there's a lot of, especially I'm not talking about the special editions, I'm talking about the original versions that came out in 77 and 1980. Not A New Hope, but Star Wars. There was no A New Hope on it when it came out in 77. Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. When you watch those movies, the storytelling works. There might be some inconsistencies, but never a point when you go, I don't buy that. Don't buy it. But nowadays, in a lot of these venerable franchises that we've all loved for decades now, new storytellers come in, and a lot of them have thrown out this basic logic, cause and effect, action and reaction. And we, the fans, are left to wonder, wait a minute, that's not how this universe works, as we saw when it was initially set up 40 plus years ago. But you're asking us to believe something that hasn't been shown to us before, and we also know what you're showing us contradicts what was already set up by the original creators in the original version of whatever it is that we love. So then we, as fans that have watched these things a million times, we are left to wonder, why would you do something so stupid that clearly contradicts what came before? And it's not because we have to have things the way we always wanted them. It comes down to the storytelling choices that are being made are bad. They're bad storytelling choices. It doesn't matter what show it is or whatever. The choices are bad and they're nonsensical. And when you're looking at them, the question you have to ask yourself as an astute viewer is, why did these creators choose to make these decisions? What is their thinking? Why do we, as astute viewers of whatever franchise we're watching, why are we the ones that look at these things and go, yo, why are you doing this? This is clearly stupid. And so we become critical and wonder, wait a minute, you guys, not only are you flying in the face of what's been done before, but you're also flying in the face of basic logic about how things in the physical world work. And it doesn't matter if you're on Earth or if you're in a galaxy far, far away. If you're a humanoid and you walk upright on a planet that has similar gravity to Earth, things work a certain way. You know, or I'll give you another example. So if you were, say, given a giant prehistoric beast, or in the case of Boba Fett, a rancor, and you knew that you were going to go to war with, say, a rival faction in the middle of Mos Espa, and you were going back to your home base, your palace, and you had a choice between riding a rancor, which we've never seen you ride before, or getting your Slave One fire spray starship, which we've already seen you from the air take out a bunch of motherfuckers. Why would you pick the Rancor to come back instead of your Starfighter that's a lot harder to hit and it's a lot more effective at taking out ground targets? Why would you make that choice? Now, I understand some people would say, well, Rob, it's so dramatic. It's so amazing when Boba Fett rides in and wrecks shop riding that Rancor. Maybe so, but from a military, a strategic, and a storytelling point of view, it makes no sense at all. And it makes our character look dumb. Because we've already seen what he can do with his starship from the air, taking out bad guys. But instead, we're left to watch this basically ridiculous, nonsensical, strategyless thing. And we're supposed to, I guess the makers of this show are like, see, here's a Rancor and Boba Fett's riding it. Isn't that cool? Well, it could be cool if everything surrounding it made sense for him to be doing that thing at that moment. But the problem is it makes him look like a chump. It didn't work very well. And so we look at these things and we're left to say, wow, that was bad storytelling. And the funny thing is, in the case of the Book of Boba Fett, we want to love it. I've always said, I'm an easy lay for this kind of thing. Well, I want to love it. Everyone wants to love it. And yet, when we watch something like this, we're like, why does it have to be stupid, bad, and nonsensical? Why? Why can't you make it good? Don't know. Which brings me to Star Trek. Now, many people sent me this article. It's an essay, and it was on Polygon.com, and I want to read it. And let's share it. And let's share the pain, and in the sharing grow stronger, shall we? So here's the article that was it was in Polygon. It was published yesterday. It's by Joe George. The article says, Star Trek needs less logic and more crying. I kid you not, that's what it says. Star Trek needs less logic and more crying, and thankfully Star Trek Discovery is doing just that. Who do you want to be? Captain Michael Burnham, Sonequa Martin Green, poses that question to the United Federation of Planets Council at the climax of But to Connect, the 7th episode of Star Trek Discovery's 4th season. The Council is convened to address the presence of a new species whose arrival in the galaxy has planet-destroying consequences, perhaps intentionally. Some Council members consider an aggressive response, but Burnham urges diplomacy, recognizing a unique first contact opportunity. Now keep in mind, this, whatever this is, has destroyed planets and killed billions of people. Disagreements such as these are hardly new to Star Trek. In fact, the paradigmatic Star Trek scene involves a group of people peacefully debating possible complicated issues. But Discovery takes a decidedly unique approach to this trope. The camera glides around Burnham as she speaks, capturing every creased brow and pleading smile, underscoring her feelings even more than her words. Martin Green pours herself into the moment, lowering her voice to a whisper when being sincere and raising it an octave when marshaling hope. She finishes the speech a near wreck, barely fighting back tears. For its detractors, scenes like this are everything wrong with the series. Over its 3.5 seasons, Discovery has established itself as the most openly emotional Star Trek series in which characters talk about their trauma, give each other meaningful hugs, and shed tears in nearly every episode. Discovery explores pathos more thoroughly than any other series in the franchise. In doing so, it underscores an important aspect of humanity, one too often downplayed by the franchise. Michael Burnham is hardly the first Star Trek character to shed tears on the final frontier. After all, who can forget William Shatner stifling a cry during the Captain Kirk's eulogy for Spock in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan? Right from the start of Star Trek, Dr. McCoy was there at Kirk's side, countering Spock's cold logic with a passionate outburst. Many of the all-time best Star Trek episodes mine the emotional core of their characters, letting them be messy and human instead of demanding that they adhere to logic in every moment. The Deep Space Nine episode The Visitor captures the longing and joy Jake Sisko feels as he grows to an adult, only seeing his time-displaced father in short intervals every few years, while the bittersweet final moments in the life of George Kirk reverberate not only throughout 2009 Star Trek, but in all 3 reboot films. But as powerful as these moments may be, Trek usually treats empathy as a challenge, a problem to overcome for the greater good. Take the classic episode The City on the Edge of Forever, in which a delusional McCoy disrupts the time stream, inadvertently preventing the death of social worker Edith Keeler, thus allowing her to found the humanitarian movement. But her work is the unintended consequence of delaying the U.S. entry into World War II, which allows the Nazis to kill far more people than they otherwise would have. As Spock describes it in his characteristically blunt manner, Edith Keeler must die. To be sure, the death scene honors the pain and sorrow Kirk feels as he prevents McCoy from saving Keeler. But the message is clear. Because the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, Kirk's emotions take a back seat to the demands of logic. Similar plots recur throughout the franchise, a fact that can be traced back to Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry. Roddenberry imagined an ideal future for humanity, which has evolved past issues such as capitalism or racism or sexism. While Roddenberry didn't explicitly outlaw emotion, he did reject plots that dealt with emotional issues, including interpersonal conflict, irrational responses to trauma, and grieving death. In a world where everyone could heal themselves and survive without struggle, he thought logic would and should always win out. Even when Trek series attended to the feelings, they either mishandle it or lose interest. As an empath and ship's counselor, Deanna Troi seemed primed to fill the McCoy role in The Next Generation, but the writers too often relegated her to describing other characters' obvious feelings. By the time Voyager's Neelix matured from a manipulative coward into an empathetic morale officer, the show had turned its attention to Hologram the Doctor and ex-Borg 7 of 9. The same problem plagues Enterprise's genial Captain Archer, who was often overshadowed by the Vulcan T'Pol. After Roddenberry died, the Star Trek shows were able to let emotions build up more throughout their shows. Deep Space Nine let its protagonists carry trauma and have romances. It even takes a nuanced look at the feelings associated with 20th century racism and PTSD. The other 3 current ongoing Trek series each embrace emotion more consistently than their predecessors. Picard uses audience nostalgia for the title character as a contrast, to Starfleet's callous bureaucracy, while the young Delta Quadrant outcasts and prodigy bubble over with childlike wonder as they become the crew of an abandoned USS Protostar. Lower Decks finds comedy not just in references to the goofier parts of Trek lore, but also in the foibles of its neurotic ensigns. In each case, these series work precisely because it counters the franchise's usual focus on logic over emotion. Picard becomes the principled leader we know from TNG when he defies the Federation pragmatism to help synthetics by assembling a new crew. As much as holographic Janeway tries to get the Prodigy kids in shape, the pleasure of the series comes from watching them learn how to make Starfleet regulations meaningful for themselves. Lower Decks is funny precisely because its characters undercut the standard image of the constantly professional Starfleet officer. But because these series go in a new direction with its characters, they end up being exceptions that prove the rule. Picard's ragtag crew, the kids on the Protostar, and the Lower Decks goofballs indulge their feelings. Members of the real, proper Starfleet do not. Of the current ongoing Trek series, these real, proper Starfleet personnel can only be found on Discovery, and in many ways, the actions of Captain Burnham and her crew carry more weight than those of even Enterprise Captain Kirk or Picard, as the USS Discovery A plays a central role in rebuilding the United Federation of Planets in the 32nd century. It's a flagship vessel both for the show and the greater series. Viewers have to take notice when Discovery breaks from the standard Star Trek portrayal of human emotion. One of the clearest examples of the difference in Trek's approach to emotional issues can be found in the Season 2 TNG episode The Measure of a Man. Taking the form of a courtroom drama, the episode centers around a debate about Commander Data's personhood status, prompted when Starfleet defines him as mere property. Captain Picard argues for Data's sentience, while Commander Riker has been ordered by Judge Advocate General Philippa Louvois to contend that Data is property, fit for experimentation by Commander Bruce Maddox. Unruly feelings abound. Riker feels guilty for prosecuting his crewmate, and persecuting his crewmate. Picard and Philippa Louvois have complicated feelings from a past romance, and Maddox has aspirations for his experiments. During the trial, Picard passionately states his case, with Patrick Stewart bringing Shakespearean gravitas to the speeches he delivers. "Starfleet was founded to seek out new life," he declares in his booming baritone, pointing at Data. "Well, there it sits!" But while Picard states his case lovingly and movingly, it's a fundamentally logical argument that he wins with. If Starfleet defines life according to forms it knows, and if Starfleet exists to seek out new forms of life, then it must alter its definition according to those new forms. Moreover, everyone involved must overcome their own emotions to accept Picard's claim. Arguably the first great episode of The Next Generation, The Measure of a Man crystallized the focus on logic found in TOS and the early movies. From that episode forward, Trek would make explicit what was often implied. Evolved humans do not use feelings to solve their problems. The Discovery episode, But to Connect, has clear parallels to The Measure of a Man, but the more recent episode emphasizes feelings over reason. Once again, the characters debate the distinction between personhood and property when Discovery's computer Zora gains sentience, and Adira even echoes Picard when they call Zora an entirely new life form. But while there is certainly a logical structure to the various positions, director Lee Rose focuses on emotions. Arguing they should follow Starfleet protocol and put Zora into a new form, Stamets recounts the fear and mistrust he feels when she refuses a direct order from Captain Burnham to protect the crew. Contending that Zora should stay in Discovery, Adira and Gray relate their own feelings of rejection and acceptance for failing to fit social standards. Even Zora describes her affinity toward the crew and her worries for their safety. In fact, Zora and her supporters win the debate not with a steel-tight syllogism, but with an ethos appeal. While investigating Zora's memory structure, Adira finds a new section which they identify as Zora's subconscious. Within this field are images of Discovery's crew connecting with and caring for one another. In part, this fact wins over Stamets and Kovich because the existence of a subconscious means that Zora cannot be considered artificial intelligence. But as the music and camera movements make clear, empathy for Zora drives Stamets' decision. For some of Discovery's critics, this plot resolves too easily, the equivalent of hugging it out. instead of facing the issue. If they apply the same level of rigor to the fallacies in Measure of Man, I cannot say. But that reading misplaces the focus of the Zora debate. The goal of the debate isn't to comb through legal proceedings, but to allow the participants to have their feelings recognized and validated. It feels marvelous being seen, Zora says after her official status is changed. In these scenes, Discovery revises the utopian future that has always been at the heart of Star Trek. The humans of the future reach their best selves not by overcoming their emotions, but by recognizing them and caring for them in themselves and others. Discovery insists that empathy is an effective way to seek out new life and new civilizations. Michael Burnham asks the Federation Council, "Who do we want to be?" Discovery answers boldly, firmly, and yes, tearfully, fully human, both logical and emotional. So there you have it. Here's an article that is arguing for hugging it out, for the emotions that we all need to find. Now, let's go back to storytelling for a minute. Starfleet, as we know it, is a quasi-military organization. Starship full of hundreds of people that have very specific jobs to do. And they're the best of the best at what they do. Now, I've always understood that people in Star Trek were fully realized human beings. They were people that grew up in a post-scarcity society. And they did understand their feelings and emotions. And they did understand empathy. That's why they're on board a starship, to seek out new life and new civilizations. However, it is in fact a starship that has to run on discipline. Because if you don't have discipline, if you don't have a chain of command, at any one moment, you're going to get blown out of the sky. We live in a world where I think people are starting to put their own emotions and feelings ahead of the pragmatic realities of living in a real world where big pieces of wood matter. You know, you need to survive in this world by understanding that it's not a place that cares about your feelings. Now, you can care about other people's feelings, and you can care about your own feelings, but in order to survive, our universe is indifferent. Our universe does not care whether you feel happy or sad today. If an 11,000-mile-long giant space amoeba is traversing through the galaxy and it is consuming all of the energy of living organisms, indeed planets full of life, it doesn't matter how you feel. What matters is that you do your fucking job, or this fucking amoeba is going to consume your home planet and kill everyone you know. If you're going to cry about it on the bridge, or you need to hug it out, or you need to decide whether or not, I don't know, I just need to talk about my trauma. And of course, in the 23rd century, in a post-scarcity environment where people are self-actualized and we're from a utopian civilization, why is it that every single main character has trauma in their lives? Why does Lieutenant Uhura on Strange New Worlds, we find out her family was killed? It's become a trope. Let's give all these characters trauma because, hey, in the future must be the same as today, right? Everybody has to cry and be self-actualized, and this is going to help us better understand the universe. Well, I would maintain that by the time you get to the time of the original series, and remember, Star Trek Discovery and Strange New Worlds take place before the original series, but not by many years. By this time, people are far more evolved. They don't need to cry at the drop of a hat. They don't need to get hugged. Why? Because they're stronger than that. Showing emotion isn't weak, but showing emotion on a military vessel in deep space when your reactions rely upon you to be focused on your crew, focused on your job, not focused on yourself That's what great Star Trek is. We live in a society right now where all we do is gaze at our own belly button lint. We talk about who we are and what we are, and let me tell you how I'm going to feel, or let me tell you how I want you to address me. That you need to make sure that I get to feel the way I want to feel all the time. Now, I want to call myself this, and you better call me what I want you to call me, otherwise I'll feel bad. That might be true, but how is that going to help you avoid the Doomsday Machine or the Gorn if they're attacking Cestus 3? How do your feelings and how do what you want to be called by everyone else, why do you get to impose what it is you want on the rest of us? Now, I have no problem right now. You want me to call you something, I'll call you anything you want. But that's because I would like to do that. I'm a polite person. But in a quasi-military structure, does everybody just get to be whoever and whatever they want to be? How are you going to have discipline? How are you going to tell me a believable story on a starship traveling in the far-flung reaches of space if every single person at the drop of a hat can feel sad and talk about what's wrong in their lives, and please let me tell you how much I feel? This is not believable storytelling. This does not work. It doesn't work for me, and I don't think it works for a lot of people. Why? Because in a military environment, that doesn't work. It undermines the chain of command. It undermines your ability to trust the person next to you. You need to trust the person next to you that they have resolve, they have steel resolve in getting their job done. I need to make sure that you're not going to break down in a crying blubber of tears when the shit gets real. And yet, Star Trek now wants us all to believe that we are better off if we can talk about, look, human beings have empathy. Being empathetic and understanding how to talk to somebody and relate to somebody, that's part of your fucking job as a Starfleet officer. It's par for the course. But when you're watching a science fiction adventure show that every episode takes time to sit down and has talking about feelings and we should do it this way, or oh my God, let's take a computer system and because the plot says so, let's turn this computer into another cliche. It's artificial intelligence that, oh my God, it has a heart and a soul. It's the Tin Man, yet again, another variation that we've seen 100 million times. Zora's now Roy Batty. Zora's seen things we people wouldn't believe. She's probably seen attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I'm sure Zora's seen C-beam glittering in the dark near the Tannhauser gates. And you know what? She'll probably tell you all those moments could be left in time or lost in time, like tears in the rain if you turn me off or something. Even the fucking artificial intelligence that runs the goddamn ship has to have feelings on this show. Because God forbid, it can't just be a computer system or an AI that enjoys who and what it is. Now, I understand they have to marry it up to some short trek in the future, whatever. But the thing is, this is not the world that we live in or should live in. Everybody needs to be in touch with their feelings. But you know what? When the job needs to get finished, your feelings aren't going to help you get that job done. Your empathy for your fellow man when the bullets are whizzing by you, you can't just stand up in a foxhole and go, yo, wait, hang on. Come on, I mean, I really feel bad. Please, it's so loud. Can you just stop your shooting? You know what's going to happen? Ba-bam! The Silver Sphere is going to get you, man. It is going to get you. Modern Star Trek is telling us that if we're in touch with our feelings, we will conquer the galaxy. We will not. And while feelings and empathy are important, modern Star Trek is betraying us and telling us that, hey, one, we all have trauma, and all we need is our co-workers to help us get through it. We'll hug it out at a Federation Council meeting. You know what? Who knows? That giant space anomaly that's killed billions of people, I mean, their trauma's over, right? Like, they're not here anymore. So let's talk about this. Let's think about this. What are we going to do about it? Now, I'm sure that eventually at the end of the season, we're going to find out that, well, it was just all a big misunderstanding. Can't we all just get along? And I don't know. Modern Star Trek is lying to you. It's telling bad stories. It's telling stories whose lessons will get you killed later in life if you listen to them. The thing about classic Star Trek, the original series, and Kirk even said it in Star Trek V, I need my pain. I need it. It forged me into the person I am now. And if I didn't have that pain, I wouldn't be as good of a Starfleet captain as I am. We need it. Hugging it out ain't going to help. And yet, apparently in the modern day, as long as we feel better, I guess that just leads to better storytelling, doesn't it? I don't believe that, but some people do. Anyway, this is where we're at with modern Star Trek. Not a fan. Not a fan. Now, you know what I am a fan of? Letters. Your letters. I love your letters. I love them. And this one's a long one. And this one, let me see if I get this right. This comes from, I've got a lot of long letters, so bear with me. Actually, bear with you guys, because you wrote them. You guys and girls, you men, women, you gentle beings, you kind souls, however you identify across the 28 known galaxies, you are welcome here, all of you. And I will listen to your stories, and I will call you whatever you want me to call you. But because I choose to do so. And I hope you do too. Anyway, this one comes from, let me see, Parastros, Pirastros, 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 I think so. What a cool name. I don't even know what that is, but okay. This is a long one. Yo, Rob, what is going on? Been a fan since the Collider Hero days, and I really respect your takes and outlook on today's popular topics. I must say I've written numerous letters and always end up deleting or refuse to send in since it turns into a 10-page diatribe and I always feel to be rambling upon review. Hopefully this reaches you and your members of the Post-Geek Singularity. One of the many topics I always want to debate on yours or Campia's show is the failure of video game movies. My summation is simple. We've yet to get an actual adaptation true to the source IP. Take some of the biggest swing and misses of Hollywood's adaptations so far. Super Mario Brothers and Assassin's Creed. God knows what happened in the Mario movie. I've heard nightmare stories of the production and actors driven to alcohol, and who can blame them? You can see the script rewrites or the end product and come up with any other result, and yeah, I'd probably turn to booze too. And I will call you a liar, haha. Original films like Inglourious Bastards or the crazy horror movies you love so much make sense to be wacky. They usually want to display a theme or question a topic and portray them in a dark or comedic manner to invoke an audience's reaction. Something like High Rise. Ooh, High Rise. I brought that up last week. Something like High Rise is supposed to raise the eyebrows as it's the original content or source material. It can pull from similar media and the director's inspiration can be whatever it wants to be. But that's the creation. The original film is the same as the original game. Tit for tat. Source is the point of origin. Of course, there's some leniency when naming something Batman and not specifying which source you're portraying, but still they have a comparison. Studios will fund a project based on a particular source material and then be okay with a product not derived from said source. How does this actually happen? We hear of studios canceling or changing directors because of creative differences, but never for gaming movies. I mean, what the hell is the point of paying millions for acquiring rights and licenses to build expensive sets to not adapt the source you paid to film? Yes, we have to adapt for our movie audiences, and yes, you'll not get a word-for-word translation. We know this as the word adaptation implies it. But tell me honestly, if you were any member of the Post-Geek Singularity who played any of the Assassin's Creed or Super Mario games, watched those movies on mute, would you have any fucking clue what they were? Maybe the plumber's outfits and color schemes near the end would have you say, oh shit, this is Mario Brothers. And not to belittle the industry and presume it's relatively easy to make a good movie in general, but Assassin's Creed was a simple can't-miss story. Sure, some exposition might be required for anything, but it's really a basic paint-by-number story at its core, even when missing the point or the soul of any game, which makes people love them for the cinematic world-building or deeply fleshed-out characters. A studio just had to film a product that gave us the game on screen. You simply have to adapt the game. Now, all games aren't equal, and some of the less narrative-driven like Sonic I can think work quite well for Hollywood's cut-and-paste fandom, but sticking with Assassin's Creed, writers were not put in imaginative handcuffs. Creatives could have conjured a sci-fi twist with those who came before, and the ancestors' memories running through the DNA. They could even Shyamalan twisted the third act and not introduce Desmond in present day until in some inner space-like portrayal. Hell, if you had creative freedom to pick and choose any of the 6 main game environments that were released by 2015 and could just do a period piece and throw out the future and still get some of the gist. But what did Big Bad New Regency do? Create a new character, new animus, new time period, even some weird new futuristic prison, throw in a bad Kanye trailer on top, and the end result wasn't even anything visually pleasing. We couldn't even get the typical, sure, this movie sucks and is cliche, but my goodness, is it beautiful, like some say about Avatar. It's brutal. We got egg noodles and ketchup. I don't want to be angry, but how does this happen? How are whole regimes just not fired from studios? Can you imagine them doing this to, like, a beloved novel? Even the pitch for these projects. Who the fuck is listening to someone say, let's do Mortal Kombat, but without the Mortal Kombat tournament, and thinking, hey, that's what made the people buy games for 30 years? Can you imagine a Spider-Man movie in that vein? The Japanese Spider-Man is really the best example for this. You tell me how that would have done globally at the box office compared to Raimi and Tobey. Hollywood even expands on some fandom's IP excessively. Take Harry Potter, the most overrated of modern pop culture franchises, to me at least. 8 movies, 3 are good, 3 maybe have a good ending at best, but at least it's about a British kid who resembles the original book's description and his family's story who goes to Hogwarts School for Magic. Why wasn't it changed to Hank Piller, a college kid at Hogwarts University that uncovers a secret plan for world domination from a rival school, and Dumbledore is the type of computer he learns economics from? That would be the video game version of Rowling's book. Like, why the fuck is that movie made to resemble the source so truthfully? How come Harry Potter looks exactly like it's supposed to? Hell, they made more movies than books. Why? Are novels just automatically considered to be well written? They stretched The Hobbit into 9 hours of screen time. Sure, probably cash grab enticing options were involved, but the entire book made it to the screen. Yet, Tomb Raider and Welcome to Raccoon City was a Frankenstein monster of multiple games crushed into a 90-minute rushed story. Like a chef throwing the uncooked ingredients of a 5-course meal in a bowl and saying, have at it, kids. It's beyond unbelievable to me in a time when comic book movies are now the full frontal face of the silver screen that video games are somehow still looked at as, won't translate well. Comic books, once dubbed just for kids, are now pumping out 15 adaptations a year, if not more, on screens and streams. Ask anyone over 65 what comic book movies meant to them. Scorsese will tell you. But look at how good we have it right now because of comic book movies. And do people buy or read comics like they buy and play games? No. Are comic books a good medium for storytelling? Maybe. The huge shocking image as you open the page and then go back and read 20 bubbles of dialogue? Sorry, Rob, I know you love them, but how are we now almost 30 years since Metal Gear and not gotten a neo-noir spy movie like Snake Eater? It's tiresome to not just see Hollywood adaptations shoot themselves in the foot, but take a cannonball to the face while they continue to buy up every property and announce projects like they're successful. I prayed and hoped the attempts will lead to something great on screen, but I've been put into the proverbial coffin. Uncharted broke me. For the first time, I'm done, and I will not be going to see Uncharted in theaters. I hope it bombs. I know it's wrong, and no, I don't want people to lose jobs, nor do I not like Tom Holland. But I know something has to be the linchpin for gaming movies, and Uncharted is not it. Another joke effort to Power Rangers, the franchise, and set up 5 or 6 films. Young Nathan Drake was a flashback in the 3rd game to give depth to his relationship with his brother and answer if he's really a descendant of the famous explorer Drake. It's not the story you need or want to start a franchise with. Think if you got young Indiana Jones without Raiders. Maybe some of you would like it, but you'd be missing out on one of the greatest, Henry Jones Jr. Maybe it's going to be good and just not feel like a real Uncharted film. I hope something comes of it, but I will not be there until streaming. You'd think an untapped industry like gaming that is financially bigger than ever and outsells comics, novels, and films on a yearly basis would get a little more respect. At least, you hope it would. Here's hoping that Halo is the start to something real. Take care, Rob, and the Post-Geek Singularity. Parastros. Well, okay, that's a long letter. That was a roundabout, crazy letter that you wrote, but I would say this. You know, obviously, here's the thing. You look at a video game franchise and you think, like, when I first played Uncharted, the first Uncharted, it was the very first time I ever thought a video game came close to delivering the experience I had to read, to watching movies or reading a book. I really enjoyed the characters. I liked the voice acting. I was totally engrossed with the story. Sure, it was a modern updating of Raiders via Tomb Raider. I got all that. I understood that. I thought the game was beautiful. I love the backgrounds, the milieus. I like the character interplay. I love the gameplay. It was terrific. But it's an amalgamation of a bunch of other things that you recognize. So, obviously, the Uncharted, there's 4 Uncharted games in that spin-off game, right? There's no Uncharted 5, is there? Not yet. But, I mean, it seems like a natural for a movie. But the problem is, all of the cut scenes in a video game are setting you up for the next gameplay level. And at the end of the day, you know, there might be storytelling turns that happen that are like supposed to be shocking or whatever. But with the success of a franchise like Uncharted, it's made, well, a lot of video game franchises have made hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. How much money has Grand Theft Auto made? I'm surprised we haven't got a Grand Theft Auto movie. I don't think a Grand Theft Auto movie would be any good because Grand Theft Auto is based on all these other crime movies all thrown together in a blender. But I think that part of the reason that video game movies aren't necessarily any good is because the actual format of the game, of the story that's being told, is there to service the game itself. And when you take the game out of the narrative, you're left with a narrative that doesn't entirely work. And then you're left like, okay, well, here's the narrative, but because we don't have gameplay, I mean, it's very funny. Watch a game walkthrough where you're just watching the cutscenes. Like, well, they're pretty good. You know, you'd think they're pretty good, but some of the walkthroughs, Guardians of the Galaxy, have Star Wars games. It's like, wow, those are pretty damn good when you watch the cutscenes all together. And why don't you do that? Well, it takes like 5, 6, 7 hours sometimes, more. And it's really hard to fit all that narrative into one 90-minute or 100-minute movie. So all you're left with is most video games are variations on something you've either read or seen before. Just like Uncharted is a riff on Tomb Raider or Raiders. So why see an Uncharted movie when you can just watch Tomb Raider or Raiders? You know, you're never going to get something totally different from Uncharted. And it's like, okay, we'll pick up Spanish galleons with helicopters and fight like they're on their pirate ship at sea. Well, that's kind of cool. But at the end of the day, that's just a visual. And I think the reason that video game movies don't succeed as well as they're supposed to is video game movies are just amalgamations of what the video games themselves were, which were amalgamations of other things that we'd seen in other mediums, whether it was comic books or movies or whatever. They're copies of copies of copies. And when they're pretty cool, like Assassin's Creed, you know, like you said, why not make an Assassin's Creed movie and have it set entirely in the period that it was set in? Wouldn't that be cool? I mean, you could come up with a story, couldn't you? I don't know. It's an interesting question. But I think that's why video game movies are copies of copies of copies of other things from other places. So we know that, and you can feel it. And they never really work entirely well. Not the way they're supposed to. This is from Michael Samiotes, I think, Samiotes. Hello, Rob. I came across a Time article from February 3rd that got me thinking. It is titled 8 Science Fiction and Fantasy Books That Deserve a Screen Adaptation by Lee Butler. The book at the top of this list is The Warrior's Apprentice by Lois McMaster Bujold, who's one of my favorite authors. I don't know if you're familiar with this particular book, but I assume you at least know her name. I do. For the wider audience, this novel came out in 1986, and Bujold herself has won several Hugo, Nebula, and Locus Awards, along with various other accolades over her career. The article's argument for the adaptation is brief, so I will include it here. In The Sorcerer's Apprentice, a famous segment from the Disney film Fantasia, a naive and hapless Mickey Mouse casts a magic spell that results in a hilariously escalating disaster. If the title of the first novel in the Verkosing saga sounds like a play on that, well, that's because it is. Except that instead of an uncontrollable army of water-obsessed brooms, our 17-year-old protagonist, Miles Verkosing, ends up in charge of an entire spaceship fleet of mercenaries thanks to a series of increasingly comical misunderstandings and improvisations. This leads to political consequences of galactic proportions. The Warrior's Apprentice is a galloping romp of a book. Miles is one of the most fantastic science fiction characters ever written, and it's a crime that he has yet to be brought to life on the screen. Perhaps part of the reason is is that he's visibly disabled. An assassination attempt while his mother was pregnant resulted in prenatal damage that even advanced medicine wasn't able to fully repair. Miles' growth is stunted and his bones brittle, and as a result, the prejudice and aristocratic society of his homeworld is ready to write him off as weak and inconsequential. The brilliance of his character is in how Miles refuses to accept his own limitations, relentlessly seeking a path to greatness in spite of, or maybe because of, every seemingly insurmountable obstacle in his ways. I love the stories from the Verkosing saga. The 11th novel, Memory, is one of the most satisfying books I've ever read, but I never imagined these tales would be brought to life as the article suggests they should be. That being said, we are living in an age of grand sci-fi adaptations. Apple's Foundation adaptation takes quite a few liberties to fit the novel into a standard television show format, but I feel it retains the essence of Asimov's story. Such a streaming show treatment could theoretically work smoothly for a more adventure-driven book like The Warrior's Apprentice, but I believe there is a core issue preventing this. The first part of the article nicely sums up the story and makes the case for why it is entertaining. But the second part of the writer's analysis is the important part. The main character is difficult to look at. He is altered in an unnatural sci-fi way that doesn't even have a good modern-day parallel. Many of his attitudes and mannerisms are reminiscent of the universally beloved Tyrion Lannister. But unlike HBO's depiction of this character, Miles is not part of a naturally occurring real-world demographic. He is not dealing with bigotry against little people. He is often mistaken for a mutant. And the whole story makes no sense unless his deformity is the first thing you see when you look at him. It informs every aspect of his life. Having to deal with a judgmental society is the basis for the unique way he solves problems. I'd love to see him brought to life, but I honestly don't know if the wider audience could tolerate it. Audiences can be quick to judge, especially when there are so many streaming options out there. I can picture the majority of people seeing an ad for this adaptation show and being immediately turned off by the main character. TV shows tend to put the pretty people out front, not the ones who have a sense of wrongness about them. The story could be done right. The production values could be incredible, the acting top-notch, but I worry that no one will watch it to find out. Shows have a hard enough time finding an audience without asking people to ignore their surface instincts. What do you think? Am I underestimating the general audience? Would people besides hardcore sci-fi fans give it a shot? Thanks. Michael. Ooh, what an interesting question. The Warrior's Apprentice. Let me tell you. I mean, I think about The Elephant Man. You know, there was a movie about a very distasteful-looking human, and yet he has the soul that I think all of us human beings would want to have. And I think something like that could be really interesting. To me, that's what makes science fiction great. Allegorical sci-fi is some of my favorite sci-fi. And, you know, even Tyrion. They didn't make Tyrion Lannister look as bad as he looks in the book. You know, he had no nose, his face was scarred, and Peter Dinklage is a handsome guy. So, and coupled with his acting and his delivery, the way he was a character that you immediately have to love. So it's a tough call, but I think something like that could be done. And I think as technology improves, we're going to get better and better stories. You know, I haven't read this book. Now knowing what it's about, I really want to delve into it because it sounds like it's right up my alley. I'd totally read that book. But I think it could happen. I think it could be made. And yeah, everybody, I mean, look, one of my problems with TV now and movies is people are too pretty. You know, it's funny. I always go back, and this is kind of a funny thing to say, but a lot of people would be like, huh? What? Like, I'm a huge fan of Jaws 2. Do I think it's like Jaws? No. I love Jaws. Jaws is one of the greatest movies ever made, one of the greatest adventure films ever made. But I like Jaws 2. And one of the things I love about Jaws 2, looking back on it now, is, you know, it's basically about cruising teenagers, but instead of cars, say on Van Nuys Boulevard or in Modesto or like in American Graffiti or whatever, they're cruising on catamarans in the ocean. And the funny thing about Jaws 2 is the teenagers in Jaws 2 they're very goofy looking. They look like real people you'd know, as opposed to, say, you know, as much as I like a movie like Easy A, it's like everybody who goes to the high schools now is too perfect. Everyone looks like a model. If they're not shopping at Abercrombie and Fitch, they're shopping somewhere else. You know, people are too pretty. I think we need to get back to when people are diverse looking, but, you know, that's just me. But I'll read this book. It sounds good. I think you'd get away with it. I don't think you necessarily have to have a beautiful protagonist for somebody to buy into it. Just tell me a great story. I think having a protagonist that might be difficult to look at, people would get used to it. They're like, I get it. I get what's going on here. It could work out. Ted O says, hi, Rob. I hope you're doing well. This is my first time sending a letter. Today marked the finale of the show called The Book of Boba Fett. And I have to be honest, I'm left feeling more than a little disappointed and perplexed. If I had to summarize my feelings, it would be with a question. Why is there no story in Star Wars anymore? Good question. You often speak how story comes first, with which I wholeheartedly agree. But over the last few years, it seems like the story of Star Wars has been degraded to nothing more than cheap thrills, big set pieces, surprise cameos. Let me explain. I have my issues with the prequels, sequels, and many other parts of canon and legends of Star Wars. For example, I'm not exaggerating when I say I believe that The Rise of Skywalker to be the single worst piece of Star Wars media ever produced. I would not disagree with you. Certainly the worst for the money spent. It's completely devoid of any notion of story or narrative structure within itself as a standalone film. The finale of a trilogy and the finale of the Skywalker saga. The amount of empty fan service and gimmicks just bored me to death. Totally agree. The Rise of Skywalker has no story. It has events happening. It doesn't have a real story. I totally agree with that. Still, despite my issues, I've always tried to remain positive about this franchise, I think all of us do, and focus on the parts that bring me joy. Me too. For example, while I hate The Rise of Skywalker, I can appreciate it as the only film in the sequels to put our three heroes together on screen in Rey, Finn, and Poe. To that end, I continually remain hopeful that new Star Wars content will be great, and I have nothing but well wishes for the creatives involved in these projects to produce great stories. The last 2 seasons of The Mandalorian seemed to reward this hope, and a narrower focus on simple stories was captivating, even if the latter half of The Mandalorian Season 2 started to signpost red flags with cameos and backdoor pilots to future shows. Now, fast forward to the release of the Book of Boba Fett, and my level of concern about the future of Star Wars has risen to a new peak. I fundamentally do not understand why or how this show exists as a story. Boba Fett has no motivations, needs, wants, or desires. There's no real antagonist to drive the conflict. Everything that does exist, such as the war over the spice trade, is simply a plot device to move characters from A to B. I would dare say you don't even understand anything about the spice trade. You see 2 people shelling out. One of them, they're one selling a box of spice to the other people that are standing by a moisture evaporator. What does spice even do in the Star Wars universe? Do you smoke it? Do you snort it? Do you heat it up and do you inject it into your veins? What does it do to you? I mean, we know what the spice does in the Dune universe. Ultimately, you use enough of it and you become a fucking, well, I don't want to ruin it for you. Let's just say you become greater than the sum of your parts, I suppose. But we know that happens. What does spice do? It's almost like they're afraid to define what it does, because if they do, it's like, there's drugs in the Star Wars universe. Seriously, what does spice do in Star Wars? Now, before you throw at me an explanation that was in one of the books, I want to know from the movie, please point to the movie, where in any of the movies or shows where we know what spice does. I'll wait. I I've seen some call the show Mando Season 2.5, but even that would be disingenuous. I feel like the Mandalorian Season 2 finale has set a dangerous precedent with regard to big surprises and cameos. The fan base seems to now expect it all the time, regardless of what is best for the story. Wrapping up, I believe the Book of Boba Fett is a show without a story, and it has left me very worried that the future of Star Wars will continue this trend of cheap thrills that are completely devoid of any character motivations or narrative structure. I hope I'm wrong. I hope all the upcoming future Star Wars projects are excellent. So do I. I think we all do. God bless Obi-Wan. I hope. I will continue to try and focus on the positives that I enjoy while wishing the creatives involved the best in their endeavors. When they succeed, we all benefit. Sometimes, though, I just wish it wasn't so hard to love a galaxy far, far away. That comes from Ted. Dude, I don't think that there's ever been any storytelling universe that people want to love more than the Star Wars universe. I honestly believe that. And it's baffling to me. I was talking about this earlier today. You know, a lot of people think about how many Star Wars stories have been told, aside from the actual movies and the TV shows that have been filmed. How many books and comics and video games. There's a lot of great Star Wars stories being told. I mean, I remember, I didn't think they were perfect, but I liked the Thrawn trilogy. The Thrawn trilogy, when I read it in, 91 when it came out. I really liked the Dark Empire comics from Dark Horse when they came out. Why not adapt those? like here's the thing. This is another frustrating thing when I'm railing on about Star Trek and Star Wars. The Thrawn trilogy or Dark Horse's Dark Empire comics. Just film those. You know, what is it? World Devastators, those big machine. I mean, why not? I mean, I've got hundreds of Star Trek books in here. I could take 10 of them and say, hey, there's these books, and the people that wrote them have written better Star Trek stories than anything we've gotten since 2009. We're now 13 years into the Star Trek hostage crisis. We're only 7 years into the Star Wars hostage crisis. But it boggles my mind. It boggles my mind how the two franchises have these built-in fan bases that want to desperately love them. Now, a lot of people, to be fair, do love these new shows, but I would dare say that they deserve better. But I watched Book of Boba Fett, and I frankly, to be honest, I thought all of it was pretty awful. I kind of liked what they were doing with the Tuscans, but that was variations on a theme. We've seen that story told so many different times, and they decided to tell it in the Book of Boba Fett. You know, I did not believe that the character of Boba Fett, as he was depicted in, let's face it, when I was first seeing the Star Wars films, Boba Fett was not in Star Wars. Boba Fett was not in Star Wars for 20 years. And what I mean by that, for you kids, you youngins, Star Wars was Star Wars from 77 to 97. For 20 years, there was no Boba Fett or Jabba the Hutt in Star Wars. What I mean is Star Wars, the original movie, like Star Wars became A New Hope, I know, a couple of years later, but there was no Jabba the Hutt and there was no Boba Fett in Star Wars until 1997. And that was a mistake. So imagine if you're an OG Star Wars fan like I am. I saw it opening weekend. It was very bizarre when you go back 20 years later and, hey, I got excited to see the special edition, and you see these sort of very haphazard inclusions. Like when we get to Mos Eisley the very first time, when Ben Kenobi says, you don't need to see his identification, there's not flying droids all over the place. It was a tense scene. The stormtroopers stopped them, and then Ben Kenobi busts out his Force powers, and that's the first time you ever see anybody use the Force. The Force has power over the weak-minded. I mean, really? How badass is that? And suddenly that scene was all about that this old wizard, that crazy old wizard, is deeply, deeply powerful, and we just didn't know how powerful. And it was amazing. Now the suspense is gone because you're like, what's whizzing through the skies? And it's a weird choice. I don't understand. It's bizarre. But it is hard because there is more bad Star Wars than there is good Star Wars. And that's odd to me. It's odd to me, at least in live action. Don't know. And now the people that are telling the stories are beholden to corporations that are like, you have to tell this kind of a story. You can't tell a story that's true to itself anymore. You have to like serve our interests. Omar94 comes to us and says, hi Rob, moderators in the Post-Geek singularity. With certain movies, I noticed how even though they were made the way they were, I think they would have worked better if they were done in a different medium to what the finished product is. Atlantis, The Lost Empire is an animated movie. However, having seen it, even though the film is what it is, it would have worked better as a live-action movie, in the vein of the live-action Disney adventure movies like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Swiss Family Robinson, and others. I don't disagree with you, Omar. Even people involved in the making of that movie said they approached it like a live-action movie. Cats is a live-action movie. If you've noticed how that movie looks, it's very off-putting and unpleasant to look at due to the cats talking and walking on 2 feet. It wouldn't look as strange if it was an animated film, which is how it would have worked better. Previous attempts at getting a Cats movie made had it done in animation instead of live action. That was just something I noticed where certain movies would have worked better in a different medium than what we ended up with. Thanks and live long and prosper. I don't disagree with you, Omar. I mean, yeah, I think that, look, Atlantis, I don't think they would have ever made Atlantis, The Lost Continent, or The Lost Empire as a live action film. It probably would have been too expensive. I liked Atlantis. I have a special thanks on the DVD special edition. My company worked on it that I was working for. But I liked it. I enjoyed it. But I agree with you. It would have been better as a live-action movie. I think there's a lot of movies that way. This comes from Shakiti Wallace. Shakiti Wallace, our friend Shakiti. How you doing, man? Haven't heard from you in a while. Dear Robert, I'm writing about the story of the writer who toils away with dreams of satisfying as many imagination connoisseurs as possible. This takes time and a rhythm that may come to more than one human being, but only the chosen few get to hear the words world class before or after their names are spoken. World class is a tough one, man. It is. I have collected the works of Stephen King, James Patterson, John Grisham, Walter Mosley, Morrison, and many others. I don't know which Morrison, Toni Morrison, and many others with a plan in mind to become a maestro when it comes to the craft that I have chosen, like those I've always admired. The way forward is to push through every challenge when a character enters my mind and asks me to create a story which will satisfy the name of the book that comes with their persona, which possesses my soul and makes me write for hours at a time. I work hard to perfect the process of creation and work my brain like an imagination chamber. Each little box in my fantasy factory has something in store. But nothing is easy, and it takes patience and vision with an ability to arrange the ideas in the right order, with each chapter making sense in terms of flow and development. The determination gauge must always be on high, and the pressure on the mind must be ignored at times, being careful not to work till you explode. Making way for a change of direction has always been a part of my preparation, as much as focusing on my goals. That's what matters. Theories that you create must have a logic to them and can come into play at any time, but they must fit in with the story as characters' individual tales weave within that story, capture the reader's attention, and make them want to visualize. I want to feel satisfaction one day when I'm old, as a fan of my work tells me I've always imagined what your character would really look like, or compares them to an actor playing their role in a movie to perfection. There are only so many ways to describe how I feel about writing, and I guess the best way is this. In many ways, it saved me from a life where I felt I should comply with the route that so many have taken to try and put your dreams away or push them down on the list of things you want to achieve in life. I never did, and I'm glad I chose to follow my heart and continue to love what I do. Trying to succeed as a writer to the point where I'm recognized for my works is something I will strive to do for as long as it takes me to become a force in the world of the novelist. I'll see you on the other side, Mr. Burnett, and I hope you'll be wearing your favorite t-shirt ready to talk about books, movies, music, and hot toys. Well, Shakady Wallace, I would say this. I don't like what you're saying here. You're bumming me out. You're bumming me out because you're saying trying to succeed as a writer to the point where I'm recognized for my works is something I will strive to do. No. No. I disagree with what you're saying here. What you don't need to worry about recognition. Don't worry about that you want recognition. That's what you're striving for. What you should be striving for is telling a great story. You don't need other people's recognition if you've told a great story. There is satisfaction that comes with knowing you told a great story. Great stories will be discovered. If you're looking for other people's recognition, there are easier ways to do it than write a novel. When you're writing a novel, all you should worry about is concentrating on telling the best story possible. If you're worrying about other people's recognition, you're not going to tell the greatest story you can tell because you're worried about the wrong thing. Who cares if people recognize you? If you're a true novelist and a true storyteller, your devotion should be to the story that you are telling, not the recognition you'll get once you've told the story. I'll tell you something. When you're working in the movie business, I know a lot of people that get into this business because they want the recognition, they want to bang hot chicks, they want to do whatever it is that they think they're going to get. They think, if I make a movie, I'm going to get all of these other things. I'll get rich. I'll get accolades. They'll throw me a ticker tape fucking parade. I'll win an Academy Award, all that stuff. Those people never succeed. They never succeed because none of that stuff helps you make a great movie. You're focusing on the wrong thing. You've got to focus on the work. You must make the work your primary focus. Because if you do that, remember, there's a train track that is life. And it's a one-way track. That's it. You're going one direction. And you need something to pull you down the track. You need a locomotive. You're a lowly caboose. You're not powered. You're sitting on the tracks. And what you need is something to pull that caboose to your destination, wherever that may be. Your work is the locomotive that gets you to that destination. If you're worried about what the people that are on the whistle stops are going to think of you, you're never going to get there, man. You need the train. You need the locomotive to pull you down the tracks. Don't worry about what other people think. Don't even strive for their people don't know fuck all. Don't worry about what they're going to think. What you got to do is concentrate only on the work. If you make the work great and you really hone your craft and you learn how to write. Now, I understand. If you're a writer, you are writing for your audience. But if you write a great story, your audience will find it. Don't worry about the audience now. Only worry about the story that you're trying to tell and make it the best it can be. And I look forward to reading the book. I'll buy it. So, yeah. And that's the way the cookie crumbles. Just my opinion. Take it or leave it. These are just observations. It's not Rob facts here. Just so you know. God bless you. Of course not. Let's see. Let's see. Scott D writes in. You know what this is? I'm gonna keep this for Let's Get Physical Media. Scott D. This is a good one. Craig Stratton writes in. Is originality still possible? Hello, members of the Post-Geek Singularity. You always hear people complaining that Hollywood has run out of ideas, and that's why we're left with reboots and remakes and readaptations. However, what if that really is the case? I mean, what is considered an original movie anymore? Is it an original title, an original script, or an entirely different concept? If a studio dares to try making an original movie anymore, are they even successful? When was the last time an original movie made it big at the box office, especially pre-pandemic? How many original movies are even good? You get bad remakes and bad reboots. Bad robot. I was going to say bad robot. You get bad remakes and bad reboots bombing at the box office, but a bad original movie not only bombs, but it's an atomic blast at the box office. Now with the global pandemic and all the fallout that will come from it, what hope do truly original movies have anymore? So I ask again, is it finally time to accept that originality is dead? And I just hope that the next remake or reboot will actually be good. Well, here's the thing. The problem that we have now is that movies and TV are really expensive to make. It's a risk. You're rolling the dice. It's more expensive than ever. Studios used to spend, when you think about the halcyon days when The Matrix in 1999 only cost $65 million. Not anymore. That's the real problem, is that movies have become really, really expensive. So it's a crapshoot, and how you have to mitigate your risk. So what does Hollywood do? They turn to previously existing IPs, like things that they can look. Amazon has had great success taking the Jack Reacher book, Lee Child's whole Reacher series that have been turned into movies before. You know, with Tom Cruise, they did it now. They made a new series, just like Amazon also did the Jack Ryan novels, the Tom Clancy books, Hunt for Red October, Clear and Present Danger, Patriot Games, Some of All Fears, those books. They're always looking at things that have already existed so they can point to that and go, let's make that because we know that that's a proven commodity. Lee Child's Reacher books have, how many have there been over the course of how many decades now? A lot. And that's when you're going to spend that much money and you're making an 8-episode series or a 10-episode series or a 2-hour movie now, you have to guarantee a certain amount of return for your investment. So that's why people are mitigating their risk. That's why we're not getting original movies. And the problem is somebody will make an original movie and, you know, people don't know what it is. And Hollywood, they don't know how to market these things anymore. Is there anybody that, even marketing, even Hollywood entertainment marketing is not unique or interesting anymore. I mean, it was really interesting. The last time I saw them really market a movie was the first Deadpool, because Ryan Reynolds was working with the marketing department doing all kinds of crazy shit. I think that was probably the greatest marketing campaign in the history of movies, was the Deadpool marketing campaign. Can you imagine somebody trying to do that now? I'm surprised. Why don't people... It's almost like marketing people now have to have looked at the last 30 years of entertainment marketing to even understand how they're going to market whatever. It's very odd. But... I think that originality can sell. It's just that originality now has to sell across. You have to get an original idea accepted and people excited about it. Then you have to make the original idea. Then you've got to get the marketing people who've never had to market an idea like this before have to figure it all out. You know, it's kind of a bummer. And, you know, the movie-going audience, everybody wants something that's familiar now, which is sort of strange. Or at least they've read the book, they'll go see the movie. I mean, I do think that we are getting things. There's a lot of great stuff. Look, Squid Game might be an amalgamation of everything from the Hunger Games to the original Running Man novel to Battle Royale to The Most Dangerous Game. Take your pick. But it was a heady, interesting, frothy mix of all those things. So you could say it's kind of like this, it's kind of like that, but it was truly, in a way, a very unique vision of these things in a way that we'd never seen before. And that movie was a huge hit for Netflix. Or pardon me, that series was a huge hit for Netflix because no one had ever seen anything quite like it. So it becomes successful. So originality still sells. It's just, it depends on how it's presented. So I still believe that it could be presented correctly. But, you know, it just takes a while. It's hard. It's hard. This one comes from John Doe. Hi, Rob. I wondered if you could answer a Star Wars question for me. I can try. In the original trilogy, they tell us Yoda is a great Jedi Master. But do they ever say he's the single most powerful? They do not. In the prequels, we're told that his midi-chlorian count is the highest next to Anakin. He is the GOAT of Jedi. But I figure it works better if he's not the best of the best, if he's powerful but not the most powerful. He's been a trainer of Jedi for 800 years. But to go with the sports analogy, many great players don't make great coaches, and many great coaches aren't great players. It seemed weird to have him leading the council and to have the council be so official with that swanky HQ. I figure he should have been living the whole time in that swamp, and promising candidates were sent to him from time to time, like a little less douchey Pai Mei and Kill Bill. John Doe, live long and prosper, bruh. I love that. Well, you know, it's funny, John. I mean, I think that when Yoda, you know, when you see Yoda on Dagobah, to me, that summed it all up. Everything we know about the Jedi, and everything else is just kind of a copy of a copy of a copy. The scenes of Luke training Grogu, I'm like, come on, this is like the cartoon Saturday morning version of something we saw in Empire. It was fun to watch, but it was a little disappointing in terms of we didn't really get to see much of it, and the philosophy was third grade level at best, which was kind of a bummer. I mean, you know, even the look at me, judge me by my size, do you? That was fun. I mean, it was fun. It was simple, easy to understand, but it was delivered with dramatic gravitas. I don't think that Yoda is necessarily it's just he becomes familiar. It's like, well, let's give you another character that you already know. I mean, one of the interesting things about the difference between Star Wars and Empire is they're like totally different movies. Different things are happening. You go to different places. You meet different people. And then after Return of the Jedi just takes you to places you'd been before. Return of the Jedi, to me, is a fulcrum. It was the point where Star Wars became not good. As I've said many times, Return of the Jedi is the most disappointing cinematic experience of my entire life. Because it took something that should have given you something epic, something gigantic. Jedi should have been the Return of the King of the Star Wars franchise, but instead, it's not. It's not at all. What are you going to do? I don't know. But I never thought Yoda was the greatest Jedi. I guess that was more of a retcon. He was a Jedi Master, and he was very powerful, but I never thought he was the most powerful. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of you who've been firing off things in this chat, and let's jump into it, shall we? Let's see, where are we at? My gosh, there's a lot of you guys. There's a lot of chats. Let's just jump in. Let's jump in, fire this up, and see what you're saying tonight. Calvin Bose, hello, Calvin. I watched an old DVD of The Godfather on my I watched an old DVD of The Godfather on my Blu-ray player, and it looks better than an HD quality on streaming. How is that possible? It's a DVD and not a Blu-ray disc, so why is the picture better? Well, it depends what you're streaming off of. It depends what they're using as a master. It depends what your internet speed is. Wait till you get that brand new 4K disc that's coming out. Woohoo! But no, some DVDs look really, really good. Depends how it really depends on your internet connection. Calvin goes on to say, do you think Braxton would be a better Star Trek showrunner than the guys they have now? He has the most important qualification. He cares about having good Trek. It's sad to think a 6-year-old would make better show, but it's true. Do you agree? Well, I think that Braxton probably would be a better judge of what Star Trek stories are than the people that are making Star Trek now. But I don't know if he could handle the political machinations of how difficult it can be to be a showrunner on a TV show. But that doesn't mean that one day he can't grow up and be that person. Who knows? Our own Joshua Levesque asks, have I seen the Drinker's Book of Boba Fett review? He's spot on. I did. I watched it just today. I thought it was really good. I'm usually pretty simpatico with the Drinker. I mean, he pretty much destroyed Book of Boba Fett. And here's the thing. I feel guilty that I disliked so much of Book of Boba Fett. I feel guilty. Even the Mandalorian stuff was fine, but I'm like, there's only 3 of you. Why are you arguing over the Darksaber? Come on, enough of this. Let's just stop for a minute and let's not fight. Or like, there's 3 of us. There's 3 of us Mandalorians here. We're arguing over the Darksaber. You have the Darksaber. However it's going to work, win it in battle, whatever. Let's discuss our situation right now. Let's not fight amongst ourselves. Even that. And Bryce Dallas Howard did a great job directing that episode. But I'm like, guys, really? There's 3 of you. Why are you fighting? Why are you squabbling? What's going on there? Scott D says, thoughts on The Natural. It might be my favorite film. Dun dun. Dun 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 dun. It's great. I love The Natural. Come on, who doesn't? Movie's awesome. If you haven't seen The Natural with Robert Redford, why haven't you? Why haven't you? See it. It's fantastic. So Scott D, I'm with you. 1001 Johnny sends in a super chat. Well, thank you for that super chat. Darn it, Rob. I'm all good and ready for bed. Then you go live. I did. I'm going live. I'll be listening as I drowse away into the dreamer's realm, so I won't hear you read this. I wish everyone a good night and weekend. Well, 1001 Johnny, actually, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and thanks for supporting the channel. That's very nice of you. Man sends in a super chat. My man, Rob. You are the only YouTube channel I support monetarily because you're my North Star in culture. That's very nice of you to say. I am as constant as the mornings. No, as your North Star, I can say that. That's good. I very much appreciate that. It's very nice of you to say. RRTNZ sends in a 666 super chat. Hail Satan. The year is one, as they say in Rosemary's Baby. I keep waiting. One day I'm either going to form a satanic cult or I'm going to make a movie about a satanic cult. And they're going to use the charm of making from Excalibur. Something like that. Hail Bob Hope you're well, and all the best to the PGS. Cheers. Random comic question for you. What are your thoughts on Grant Morrison and your favorite of his works? I'm guessing AS Superman. Cheers, mate. Grant Morrison. Oh, my God, there's so much Grant. I have so much of his work. I'd say Doom Patrol. I really love his Doom Patrol right over there, which I have. I thought it was good. I really like Grant Morrison. Arkham Asylum. There's so much Grant Morrison. There's so much. I don't know about Final Crisis, though. I have tons of it. I don't know what I would say is my favorite. I look around. I have a lot of Grant Morrison, but I don't know what my favorite is. You know what? Because you're asking me now, I want to know. Because there's so many things I'm forgetting. I'll tell you. I will look at his. I will look at his my favorite things that Grant Morrison has written. Let me go. Is there a list? Do they give me a list? Yeah, Arkham Asylum. Wow, was that 1990? Yeesh. I'm just looking at it. These are his awards. I love JLA Earth too. I like that. Yeah, that was good. All-Star Superman. Oh, that's what you meant. All-Star Superman's so good. I loved All-Star Superman. But I mean, Arkham Asylum. That was probably the first thing I saw him do. There's too many. I'm looking at this. I can't even begin to tell you. He's written so much. But there's a lot. I'm looking at this. It's overwhelming. I'd have to go through and look. Pouch 44 became a member. Thank you. Jeff Yerke and Mrs. Yerke are here. Hello, Jeff. Hi, Rob. Just a quick pop in to say howdy. The evening time slots are difficult for Laurel and me, as this is our prime TV watching time. Tonight, Reacher. Ooh, you got to watch it. It's great. Gotta admit, we ended up really enjoying Station 11. It tied up nicely. Live long and prosper. The Yerk, man, it did tie up nicely. It's based on a good book, too. You got to read that. John Suntress from the Word Balloon Podcast. Hello, John. How are you? John Suntress says, the Disco Crew acts like a first-grade soccer team that celebrates accidental goals. Oh, I love that. Accidental goals. Amen. Real Starfleet officers don't celebrate correct solutions. They get back to work. The lack of military professionalism in disco characters is infuriating. Dude, I agree. I don't believe it. I don't believe any of the people that are on those ships are real people. I'm like, come on, man. Darth Plato sends in a tip and says, also, Rob, not falling back to the stronghold, Fett yielded the initiative, which you would never willingly do. Riding the Rancor would be fine if he had engaged it in the open outside of town. In town, it only caused collateral damage. Same with using the Slave One. Look, I don't understand. Like the Critical Drinker said, I don't understand much about the final battle in the Book of Boba Fett. I really don't. If you've got Helm's Deep, go to Helm's Deep. Like, they're going to come after you there, right? Why are you standing? Why are you making your stand in a blown up bar? Like, who would do that? In what universe? Oh yeah, the Star Wars universe. People didn't used to be stupid in Star Wars. They're stupid. Alex K says, Rob, the real reason why you were instantly banned by the Paramount Star Trek Twitter account, well, to be fair, it was Star Trek on Paramount Plus Twitter account, is because here at Modern Star Trek, we believe in diversity and inclusion, which is an elite club in a small walled-off garden that needs many people canceled and banned. It's true. I can't argue with that. You know what? We believe in inclusion and diversity until such time as we don't like what you think or believe in, and we need to get rid of you. I mean, it's so weird that that's everyone's like go-to position. I don't hate things because of who's in them. I hate things because they're badly written. I mean, look, Sonequa Martin Green is trying her hardest. I think she's a hell of an actress, and she's a beautiful woman. The stuff she's given to say, it does not serve her well. And it doesn't serve anyone well, to be honest. Any of the actors on those shows, they're trying hard. But wow. Alex, that's very funny. Putch44 sends in another tip and says, hi, Rob, in the Post-Geek Singularity. What universe do we live in where Seth MacFarlane is making better Star Trek than Star Trek? Our universe. This one. June 2nd can't come soon enough for season 3. That it would be the Orville season 3. We'll see, although it did worry me that, that scene they showed is this epic battle sequence. It's really cool. But, and battle sequences are great. But I think everybody let's do the best. Star Trek has wanted to do the best of both worlds in Wrath of Khan for the last 40 years. And it's so tiresome. It's so tiresome. Echo-based network. How's it going, man? Man, how are you? Is it one or two of you? Just one, I'm sure. Good evening, R&B and chat. Me and Mexican Iron Man are at a tactical gun school together this weekend in South Carolina. See you tomorrow night on our show. It should be a great discussion. I will see you tomorrow night on your show. Well, you say hello to Mexican Iron Man and you shoot those hollow points for me. Superhero displays, 1 of 5. Superhero Display says, hey, what the fuck is going on? Where the heck have you and Az been? And where's my favorite show on the internet's fully articulated? Now, listen here, Burnett, Superhero Displays. In the past 2 years, I've lived through 55 lockdowns, my business imploding, and Tom Brady retiring, and all I've had to pull me through is a weekly fucking toy show by 2 middle-aged dudes who seem to be really, really upset by someone called JJ something or other. So get your shit together and think what's real important. Me. Because I tell you, I don't need any more drama. So, yeah, how have you been? Lovely to see you back, etc., etc. Well, for those of you, I miss my boy Az, my favorite Yorkshire man. But I started working full-time with John Campea during the week. So I am unavailable to do those streams, and we live 8 hours apart. So it's tough. But we'll get back to it at some point. I miss Az. There's lots to talk about. So I am sorry that we haven't been there for you, but we'll come back. Don't worry, I want to talk some toys. Darth Plato sends in another tip and says, read classics about this talk by Burnham about these invaders. This is an awful approach to such a meeting. How about this? Try reading about the debate. Oh, I can't. Okay. Try reading about the debate between Themistocles and Aristides when Greece was threatened by the Persian Empire. I'm going to do that. You know what? I'm going to put this in the live chat so all of you get this because I butchered these words. So let's see. I'm gonna put this in the chat so you all can. Oh, I have to verify it's me. I have to verify it is me to get back to this. Hang on. I'm going to use another account. This is so weird that I'm on YouTube and I have to re-verify. Okay, I will Google. As I'm live streaming, I will verify it's me. How about that? It couldn't find my Google account. I just pumped. What? Oh my god. I don't even know what this means. You know what? If that's what you're going to do to me. If you're going to do this to me now, I'll try it the other way. How about this? Man, first verify it's you. Well, thing is I have to get into my account. Otherwise I can never, man, this is so annoying. Hang on. I think it's just like kicked me out. Oh wait, nope, it's letting me back in. There we go. I'm back in. I can now. I don't know where I'm at now. See, watch me. It's the high drama. So now I was gonna put this what Darth Plato said. So I'm back in the chat. Let me put this in. So I'm gonna go read this. I want to read about this debate. So there it is. That's from Darth Plato. So we should all read about this, which is good. Swag props, my man Cal says, as much as I didn't like the Book of Boba Fett, at least it had some entertaining moments. It did. And I could still poke fun at its silliness. Modern Star Trek, on the other hand, to me, is pure cringe and devoid of any entertainment value. Cal, you're not wrong. You and I definitely park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. So I agree. Yeah, no, I think modern Star Trek is pure cringe, and the stories are... I can't wait to see what feelings they're going to use to defeat or make friends with whatever. I know billions of people are dead, but hey, man, it's a great first contact situation. The butt of Bubba Fart says, in the season finale, I really liked it when the guy with the eyepiece in the biker gang decided to blast someone, and he did a beautiful spin move right before he fired his blaster. The butt of Boba Fart has spoken. I love that they've memed that. What was that about? Have you guys seen this? In the final episode, the guy who spins around, with the Mos Espa Vespa gang and shoots. They meme the shit out of it. Go look at it. It's like you're like, what? What is this? Why take time out to do that? Mr. Torrance says, morning, Rob. It's 5:30 a.m. here. I've been rewatching Daredevil, and it seems that thanks to Fisk, more cops die in its first few episodes than the whole of Michael Mann's Heat. Great stuff. Stay classy, dude. Daredevil rules. I love Daredevil. And you're right, people die. I heard. You know what? I heard about this. Jason S says, I watched this on what's the League of Legends girl? I watched her YouTube video on this. She's really cute. Laura Legends, is that her name? I think it was her channel. Jason S says, have you heard of Mattel giving 3 strikes to a YouTuber who reviewed new Jurassic World toys on YouTube? It got sold early and probably Universal doesn't want those toy designs to be seen. That's fraud, as their copyright wasn't violated for doing a review. Okay, so I heard about this. I think it's Laura Legends. Is that her name? She has a fun YouTube channel, lots of cool toys. She reported on a YouTuber that got 3 strikes from Universal for reviewing Jurassic Park toys, Jurassic World Dominion toys that he bought. Like, they weren't stolen. And it's like, it's violated our copyright. Like, bruh. I mean, this is the world that we're living in. That Universal, people, like, there's a lot of people, including myself, who now are making a living off of YouTube. And Universal comes in and someone bought their product. It wasn't stolen, bought it from somewhere. And they review their product like people do. And Universal hits them with copyright strikes and gets their YouTube channel taken down. People that actually like their product. This is what is wrong with our world today. I mean, especially like this guy, all he did was like review dinosaur toys. Like, it's just, this is what's wrong with the planet. That a big corporation's like, we're sorry, you reviewed our dinosaur toys from our upcoming dinosaur movie. Uh-oh. I mean, I think we should. It's a little thing, but it's accumulation effect that we're all going to reap we're going to be reaped. The reaper's coming for us. Yes, it's terrible. Their copyright was not violated, and you have all the rights to do so. But Universal is a big, international, publicly held corporation that will say to YouTube, "You have to do this." No, YouTube needs to stand up. Google, big tech, but they won't. They want those universal dollars. It's unconscionable that somebody at YouTube would accept this, would allow this to happen to their creators. I mean, it's gross. Ron C says, hello, Rob. I know you're not a fan of View to a Kill. Me either. However, Tanya Roberts is my favorite Bond girl. Really? Okay. She was a Charlie's Angel later seasons, but all right. I'll give it to you. Which Bond girl do you admire with Grace? Of course. I think I love Eva Green in Casino Royale, but I also like Barbara Bach as Anya Masova. But I think maybe Domino. There's so many. Kissy Suzuki, like her too. Wai Lin, Michelle Yeoh. Why not? So many. Joe the Lawyer sends in a super chat and says, Rob, do you think that people are more likely to watch and enjoy the new crap Trek shows if they started watching Trek after TOS, TNG, and DS9? Probably. You know what? I would think so. You know what, though? I really think that people know... I think people have become a lot less discerning in terms of storytelling because people aren't being taught the classics anymore. They have the less and less of a literary background, so they can't recognize what a great story actually is. All people have done is watch TV and seen movies. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but I think people People need to be a little bit more literary. Ricky B says, you saw Killing Floor. I think the main character, Reacher, had the proper number of tears as compared to Discovery. Totally agree. Totally agree. And you know why. I mean, there's some real pathos happening there. Ron C. says, I thought I'd be excited for the Disney Kenobi series. I'm not anymore after the Book of Boba Fett. I have a bad feeling about this. Ron C., I got to say, I'm right there with you. I was very excited about Kenobi. After the Book of Boba Fett, I'm kind of done. You know, I'm kind of done with Star Wars. I will watch Obi-Wan. I'll watch the shows. But I just, that so put me off. Everything about, I couldn't believe, there's so many things about Boba Fett that, here's the thing. We all have a blind spot. I think so many of us just want to love Star Wars. And there's a lot of people that are going to love it just because it's got Star Wars iconography in it. But I've never loved anything just because it had the iconography in it. When I saw Return of the Jedi, I fucking hated it. I hated everything about Return of the Jedi. I didn't like the way the Imperial officers spoke. You know, I didn't like the fact, there's so much about Return of the Jedi I didn't like. All of it felt wrong. Same with Boba Fett. I felt when I was watching Book of Boba Fett that it was all just off. I didn't believe any of it. It had no verisimilitude at all. Squadra Course says, any thoughts on gray villains versus pure evil? Well, pure evil's boring. I mean, the great thing about villains, or as I like to say, antagonists, great villains all think they're right. You know, I mean, they think they're doing the right thing. Hans Gruber, like in Die Hard, people love Hans Gruber, but Hans Gruber, he thinks he's an exceptional thief. You know, look at him. He's got beautiful bespoke suits. He's very intelligent. He has a crack group of people that really know their jobs. I mean, the great villains are antagonists. And you know, just pure evil. What is pure evil? I don't think that I think pure evil is boring. A good villain is multifaceted. Richard says, Star Wars is confused because Lucas was confused. He was a remedial liberal who didn't get the politics he was trying to advance. From the anti-Nixonian first Star Wars film that his wife had to fix, to the odd scientific supremacy of the Phantom Menace, to trying to downplay the wickedness of the Soviets in Crystal Skull because they have the right idea, I guess. The smartest thing Lucas ever did was make $4 billion off Disney before they realized he had less ideas than he did. Well, Richard, I think that's an interesting way to put it, but I don't think you're wrong. I think that the reason Star Wars was as good as it was is because Lucas had collaborators. And obviously Empire Strikes Back, which is a movie that Lucas admittedly does not like, especially if you read Rinsler's books. He didn't like Empire because of the way it was made. So, yeah. And it's a bummer. But, you know, we like it. Yeah, I mean, I love Star Wars and Empire, but you're not wrong. You are not wrong. And his wife, as an editor, did. A lot of people, though, contributed, not just her, but that's a good way to put it. The problem is, here's the thing. You know, you can say what you want about Star Wars and Empire. To me, there are two Star Wars movies. There's two Star Wars, the original Star Wars, and Empire Strikes Back. That's it. Those are top tier. Everything other than those two movies is way, way below. There's a lot of Clone Wars I think is pretty great, and some of Rebels I think is pretty great. But for the most part, there's Star Wars and Empire, and everything else is lesser than. But people don't want to hear that. Hassoni Parker says, just want to say, Rob, you're the heart of the John Campy Show. Well, thank you, Hassoni. What a cool name. I appreciate that. But, you know, I got to say, John, you know, it's his show. He's the heart. I am I'm the cocaine you snort at a great party. Here's the bindle. Just unfold it. Make sure you keep everything in that crease in the middle. It'll be all fine. Claudius, our friend Claudius is here. Rob, as you've said, despite the fact that Star Wars and Star Trek feature military organizations, the current writers don't seem to understand the military or have a grounded vision of futuristic tactical warfare. Amen. I mean, and the funny thing about it is, you know, the people that Gene Roddenberry, well, he was in the military. A lot of the people that wrote for Star Trek and Star Wars, but Star Trek were in the military. They were part of the greatest generation. I mean, And you know, that's kind of makes it cool. When I watch modern Star Trek, I'm like, wait, I don't even know what are the ranks here. I don't even think the writers know. Like, what do you who? Is there anybody else on this ship except the bridge crew and Stamets and engineering? Where else do you work? Oh, I guess there's people on the hangar deck. I mean, what is the military? How does this ship work? What is the chain of command? Does anybody know what they're doing? I never get the feeling anybody knows what they're doing. They're all kind of doing, well, this needs to be done. Yeah, and Claudius, as you know, that destroys verisimilitude. Darth Plato says, "Have you seen Peacemaker?" I have. I have not watched the new episode though. The aliens attacking the police station was brutal. I loved it. I haven't seen that many cops taken out since the Terminator. No, it was brutal. I love Peacemaker. I think it's great. And James Gunn, the way he changes tones wildly, but it all works. I love it. Love it. I think it's great. I can't wait to watch the new episode. I haven't seen it. Claudius goes on to say, by the way, Claudius, one half of the official couple of the Post-Geek Singularity. Hashtag Boba Fett battle. A few more tactics. 1. Anakin and Ahsoka rolled EMP grenades slowly through destroyer droids' force shields. That's good. Why didn't Freetown forces maintain a flank position using the speeder tank? Mando Boba should have stayed airborne and mobile. I thought it was cool when they were doing that. I agree with you. I mean, that was the Critical Drinker sums it up too. That might be the very worst battle I have ever seen, ever depicted anywhere. It's like, I'm just going to stand, Blacker Stanton's just going to be, I'm just going to stand here in the middle of the street. Like, come on, man, take a sniper position. Why are you standing in the middle of the street? Why? I mean, it was so, okay. Claudius brings up a good point. You know what I was talking about at the top of the hour, or the first hour? You have to, anybody who's going to fight a battle, pick your favorite, whatever movie you watch that has a battle in it. I mean, I love the scene in Gladiator when they're in the arena, when Maximus is like, have any of you ever been in the military? We all have to work together. If we work together, we'll survive. You know, here's how we're going to do it. We're going to put up our shields, you know, and create, they'll create, I don't know what you call it, a perimeter, well, something that they're inside of. I mean, when he gets everybody to work together and act as a unit, because the gladiators that are coming after them are basically fighting one-on-one, so if they work as a unit, they can overtake those people, even though they have bigger forces. They've got horses and bows and arrows, and they can basically aerial attack, even though it's on the same plane. It works. The battles in Book of Boba Fett, it's like nobody... It literally was like watching 6-year-old kids playing with their Star Wars action figures. Like, guys, if you were going to be confronting an overwhelming force, first go to your Helm's Deep. Go back to the palace, man. Go back to Jabba the Hutt's palace. And I mean, and do any of these people have anything like a spaceship of their own? Do the Pikes have anything? I mean, why are they fighting a battle open in the streets? Why not do it at night? Why are you fighting in the middle of the day? Why? I don't know. So bad. Yes, but Claudius trying to figure out it was bad. It was just not good. It didn't make any sense at all. Why not, like, place mines in the streets? Do something. Anything. It was so bad. Richard says, problem with Discovery and its focus is on emotions is that I'm afraid there are 3 crying sessions from justifying extermination of people. These are proto-fascists. There is a reason the Nazis were all about emotion and anti-rationality. Look, man, I see proto-fascists every day now. If you don't call me what I want you to call me, we're going to come after you. I mean, I'm telling you, man, I've had conversations with people that I'm one step away from. If they had a weapon, I would fear for my life. And it's weird. I don't get it. I mean, I do get it, but I'm like, are you that angry and that fragile? I mean, come on, man. Tom Jr. Jackson says, Rob, just saying hi, buddy. Well, hello, Tom. Tom Jr. Jackson, of course, the goof emeritus of the channel. Hello, Tom. Richard says, I've always been reluctant to accept the thesis that Stargate SG-1 was better Trek than Trek. It's not. But I've been watching through it, and it's a good argument. What appears to be deceitful villains turn out to be individuals with understandable motivations. You know what, though? That's just great storytelling. Because, if your villains aren't somewhat sympathetic, go back and watch Errand of Mercy. The first time the Klingons are introduced in Star Trek, and Kirk is undercover as Barona, and he develops a relationship with Kor. John Calicos' Kor. And they have mutual respect. I mean, at the end of the episode, when the Organians reveal themselves, they're both arguing to be able to let them fight a war against the Organians. It's like, wait a minute, what are we doing? It's great. And then they both, at the end, it's too bad we averted this war. And Kirk's like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have fought. And Kor's like, yeah, but if we did, it would have been glorious. It was great. That's what we need more of. I don't know if it was better Trek. It was good, though. Stargate, to be fair, I have not watched a lot of it, but I have watched a lot more of it than I'd watched last year, and I like it. It's good. It's because, again, it's not stupid, and it's got some really interesting stuff in it, which is good. Mattuine says, Discovery. Let's save the galaxy by whispering our emotions and sharing our feelings. Why aren't the Vulcans rolling their eyes? I don't know. Because, the funny thing is, that I don't understand is there's sort of this idea in Star Trek Discovery that, listen, if we focus on our feelings, that somehow the galaxy is going to be less dangerous than it is. That all the stuff in it, if we're more in touch with our feelings, look, the galaxy, the universe is indifferent to your suffering. It doesn't care about your feelings and your emotions. And I'll tell you something, your feelings and emotions are not going to help you survive. It might help you get along better with other people, but it's not going to help you survive the universe, because feelings and emotions, the universe doesn't have them. Maybe the human adventure is understanding how to come to grips with people, which is fine, but the universe is indifferent to your emotions and your suffering. The universe does not care. Doesn't care how you perceive yourself. It doesn't care how, that's why it just doesn't care. So to tell a story, a science fiction story, where human beings need to self-actualize their emotions betrays the actual importance of the story that you're telling. Because that's already self-evident. The people in the original series, they already understood their emotions. As a matter of fact, they understood their emotions so well. Spock understood his emotions so well that he could control them completely. Vulcans have emotion. The idea that Vulcans don't have emotion is a complete misreading of the text. Vulcans absolutely have emotion. As a matter of fact, they used to be savages where they gave into their passions. But with the application and the revolution that took place in their society, when they listened to the teachings of Surak and applied the ideas of logic, they brought themselves under control. And that's the whole thing. And Spock is like the ultimate Vulcan, because he's learned he's a man of two worlds. And what does Star Trek Discovery do? Well, we have to make Spock more palatable, so let's give him a learning disability. No, Spock's disability is that he is a man of two worlds. He's half human and half Vulcan. It's not really a disability. But to saddle him with a generic learning disability to what? To make him, more acceptable or desirable to people that actually have learning disabilities is a betrayal of what the character of Spock is. Again, it is a misreading of the text. And I hate it. But remember, Mattuine, not only women have emotions. It's, you can't say that we all have emotions. And what's worse, though, I think what's worse is they make it seem like women and their understanding of emotions, they must understand emotions better than men. And the application of those feelings and emotions are somehow going to elevate them above everyone who doesn't. And it's so weird. Like, I don't believe Tilly, I know she's not around much anymore, but I don't believe a character like Tilly could even survive in a military or militaristic, any kind of a disciplinary situation. I don't believe Michael Burnham has done, she would have been, aside from mutiny in the first episode, she's done so many things that go against the chain of command, and why she's been elevated to, I don't believe it. I don't believe anything that she's done has led her to the place that she's at. That's why I hate that shit. I hate it. I can't deal with it. RRTNZ says, Hail Bob, an opinion. Guardians of the Galaxy 1 had more Star Wars vibes in the sequel films. I agree. They saved the galaxy with the power of friendship. Cheesy, but I loved it. What's your take on Guardians of the Galaxy? No, I think Guardians of the Galaxy was a great successor to Star Wars. Again, you take a great. They were kind of Star Wars and Guardians of the Galaxy kind of came out at the same like that whole '70s era. It was great. It was great pop sci-fi meets comic book. Flash Gordon. That's what Star Wars is, and really, really good stuff. And I think Guardians of the Galaxy was fun. The characters are great. They have a great camaraderie and mutual respect, and it's just so much fun. I mean, it's goofier than Star Wars is, but I agree. Mikey Lito, hello, Mikey, says, save it for Andor. No volume, no Manhattan Beach, no Atlanta, just Diego Luna in London. Hopefully no Tatooine either. I hope so, man. I want to see a hardcore, hard-hitting. I mean, if they follow what Rogue One was, it'll be a great show. I really hope so. Fernando Barrero. Hi, R&B. I didn't know you were on it this time. I didn't either. It was a weird time. Just happened to jump on a few minutes ago. Just finished watching Nightmare Alley, which I enjoyed. Stellar cast. I noticed on the end credits a position called COVID Operations Manager. What is that? Well, Fernando, yes. All sets now, all movies that are being made now have COVID officers, COVID compliant officers, because they have to make sure nobody has COVID so they can continue making the film uninterrupted. I mean, when a crew comes down with COVID and you have to shut down, it's incredibly costly. So they have to have people. They now have literally people that all day long their jobs are to make sure the crew doesn't have COVID. They're every day they're giving COVID tests. So that's what they have. By the way, this is a good time to remind everyone, if you like Nightmare Alley, you can go to the John Campea show and you can see the latest episode of the Designing Hollywood podcast where I interview the director of photography, the production designer, Tamara, who was the actual production designer on Star Trek Discovery. Didn't say a word about that, though. And, of course, the costume designer, Louis Cicada. It was really good. Check that out. I think you'll like it. Joel the lawyer sends in a super chat and says, how's the big move going? Ooh, well, bit of a snag on that front. Yeah, which is, there's a legal reason for it too, but we'll see. This has been a very long, drawn out, difficult process. But yeah, we'll see. Superhero Displays sends in a tip and says, R&B, I love you, but you're crazy. Return of the Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie, and as this is cancel culture, I now hate you. And I will now start a campaign to cancel you from YouTube and all of planet Earth. R&B loves hashtag R&B loves J.J. Abrams. I'll tell you something. Watch all three movies all the way through. I'm telling you. You watch. And by the way, if you can, and if you need me to send them to you, I will. Get the original versions of Star Wars and Empire. So much better. But watch them. When you get to Jedi, it's like you're getting to a different sensibility. It's crazy. Anonymous says, all this stuff is probably bad because they either have to embrace full critical gender or race theory or otherwise don't advocate values counter to it. Do you think I can short circuit this by hiring black nationalist writers and good writers can start again? Well, here's the thing. Here's what I would say. When it comes to that kind of thing, look, our history in this country, in terms of how we've treated both indigenous peoples and other races, specifically black African, people of black African descent, ain't good. I mean, it ain't good. We're racist fucks. We are. And the thing is, I don't have a problem with us embracing the fact that we are racist fucks. Admit it. We should just admit it. Look, I was raised Jewish, and I know that there's a lot of anti-Semitic people in the world, too. We're racist fucks. We hate people. It's irrational. But I understand, I mean, genetically, we're hardwired when we see people that are different than us. We have a fight or flight response as well that we're constantly battling. But that's what civilization is, man. And I think that while I am no fan of critical race theory or the ridiculous slide into fascism that seems to be part of the left in academia and all that stuff, I think it's weird. I just don't. I mean, I get it, but this idea that if you don't believe what I believe and if you don't say what I want you to say, I will come after you. I'm like, that's dangerous to me. I honestly believe, look, there is a certain truth to the idea that we are born with we have a genetic disposition, and it comes from our natural survival instincts to have adverse reactions to people that don't look like us. I get that, but that's biology, and that's genetics, and that's these are things that were built into us as a survival issue. But that's not civilization. When you have civilization, then you overcome all of these things, and you realize, oh, I get it. We were different, and it's the same thing. I mean, we know when things are different, and not just other human beings, but other creatures. Like, I got to tell you, last night, man, we were walking the dogs, as we do. I'm going to have to go walk the dogs soon, because at 10:30 we walk the dogs. But we saw, like, a cat. We have the dogs with us, right? And our dogs freak out at anything that doesn't look just like them. They like other dogs, but they see other things, Tallulah especially. We see what looks like, 'cause there's coyotes in our neighborhood. It looked like a big cat. And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, that's a big cat, but that cat's big. And as Tallulah's freaking out, and we're walking toward it, instinctually, she's a half Irish setter, so she's kind of a hunter, and so she's, and this cat, like, goes up into the tree, and I'm like, that is a big effing cat. It was a bobcat in our residential neighborhood. I took a picture of it. It's on the Instagram. I mean, this thing was huge. And I'm like, that could have gone wrong. I mean, like, look, I'm not one of those people that I do not have a problem having a real honest and frank discussion about how people have been treated on this planet, because many people have been treated terribly for thousands of years. We're terrible people. We're terrible. We're horrible. And we treat people horribly. But I don't believe that you can trade one oppression for another. You can't turn around and say people are born racist. I mean, in a way, you could probably point to biological things about us, that we have genetic things that are built into us that cause us to our animal natures, to survival instincts. But that's what civilization is for. And you can overcome those things. And the idea that, well, let's just trade one oppression for another. We've been doing this for thousands of years. It doesn't work. I mean, everybody has something unique to offer. And like I said, and like I've always said, there's only one of each one of us in the entire infinitude of the universe. One. And that means every single person, any one of you watching this show right now, there's only one of you. I know someone's going to say, well, Rob, I have a twin. All right, so there's two of you in the infinitude of the universe, which means you've cut your worth in half. But I would still say there's only one of it. There's only one of us. Only one of each one of us. That means we're the most precious, valuable resource in the universe. Why do we want to hate each other? Every person I meet knows something I don't know. They might know how to cook food better than me, or they might know how to build or put up a tent faster than I could, or make a bird feeder, or figure out how to plant the best roses. I don't know, whatever it is. But every single person on this planet, there's only one of each of them. And we're always in such a hurry to want to get rid of everybody. Why? I guarantee you this. We're all going to be gone someday. We're all going to be gone. Why are we in such a hurry to get rid of each other? I mean, come on, man. There's only one of you in the entire universe. Just one of you. I mean, that's amazing. And yet, I want to hate this guy or hate this person. Why? Why hate them? It doesn't make any sense to me. And it also depends on where you're standing on the planet Earth. I've also never understood, when I went to South Korea in 2018, you know what I realized? Not a whole lot of white people in Korea. I finally knew what I realized. I'm sure everywhere I went, people looked at me funny. I'd walk into a store, people looked at me funny. I'm like, oh, now I really get it. Everywhere I went, people looked at me strange. I'm like, in America, I've never thought about that. But there are people that live in this country, and you know who they are. They can't go where they want to go without people staring at them or wondering or getting nervous or whatever. I never knew what that was like until I went to Korea. By the way, I love Korea. South Korea is beautiful. I loved it. I love the people there, but still, it was like, wow. Travel around the world, man. It's the quickest way for people to get rid of their prejudices. Travel around the world and eat meals with people you wouldn't normally know. But Look, I think Anonymous, what I really want to say is there's a lot of people that have legitimate grievances that come from groups of people that have been persecuted for hundreds of years. And I understand it. I get it. Is it good? No. Do I wish it was different? Yes. But right now we're going through a period of time where at least people are having the conversations. At least people are talking about this kind of thing. They're conversing about it. They're being honest about it. And they're putting it out in the open. It is unpleasant, and there's realities that are going to be difficult to swallow. But in the long run, it's going to be a good thing. It's just that we're going to have to live through a part. Look, I don't know if I'll ever work again in Hollywood. I'm a white middle-aged dude. No one cares what I have to say. So, will I make another movie? I hope so. Hope so. Claudius goes on to say, Rob, one more Star Wars thought. The writers of Star Wars, post-Empire, has continuously undermined the idea that the rebels and resistance are competent enough to survive for a day against the Empire or the First Order. Yeah, it's so weird. I don't understand it either. I mean, look at Rogue One. At least Rogue One showed a competent fighting unit that could figure out how to go do things, and it's such a bizarre idea. The one thing about Rogue One that I thought was pretty good, it's not perfect, but it did show, in fact, that the rebels knew what they were doing, that they could muster a fighting force and they could actually take on the Empire. I agree with you. It's weird. Richard says, what would you say was the controlling idea of Wrath of Khan? Sure, there are themes of revenge and greed or whatever, but surely the idea is found in Kirk saying at the end, I feel young, meaning that he had to face death to find a purpose in life. Well, look, you know what? I think there's a lot going on in Wrath of Khan. But I think first and foremost, there's this idea of, Kirk did this thing and moved on. Kirk's a man that travels around the galaxy, and he, at the end of Space Seed, Spock says, it would be interesting, I'm paraphrasing, to see the fruit that had flowered, or the fruit that had flowered from the seed you planted today. At the end of Space Seed, Kirk plants those genetic supermen on SETI Alpha 5, and Spock comments, I wonder what you've just done. So Wrath of Khan shows what Kirk did. What he did was he planted a garden and left that garden untended. So that was one thing that he did wrong. That kind of responsibility. That was one thing. The father that he never was. And there's a lot of things. I mean, feeling young is one of them. Mortality, facing death. I mean, I wouldn't say that. I think more than anything else, though, Wrath of Khan is really about what does it mean to move through life in a responsible and in a respectful and in such a way as that. I mean, Kirk is not perfect. He shirked responsibilities, and how do you reconcile that as we move through life? Things fall by the wayside. How do you continue to be a righteous man, a man that does things, and how do you accept the responsibilities for the things you can and can't control? There's a lot of stuff that is going on in Wrath of Khan. And at the same time, you're dealing with the fact that you weren't the man you were 20 years ago. You're getting older. You're facing mortality. I mean, I think how we face life is at least as important as how we face death. I think all of that's very important. But really, I think, if anything, Wrath of Khan is about taking stock in a life that is only half finished. And where are you going to go? Where do you want to have come from, and where do you want to go? And where do you want to be right now? So I don't think there's necessarily a controlling idea, other than the fact that the idea is how do you lead a life that is worth living at the end of the day? And maybe that's the foundation of any story. Joe the lawyer says, do you think Favreau and Filoni will eventually erase the sequel trilogy? I don't think so. I mean, they can't really erase it because it exists. So I don't think there's any way that they can erase it. Yeah, I mean, I look, I find myself baffled. I watch Rise of Skywalker, and I'm just like baffled by that movie. I'm like, what is the story that you're telling here? What was the story that the sequel trilogy set out to tell in the first place? I honestly don't know. I don't know. And as we pointed out on the John Campea show, that one shot in the Jurassic World Dominion trailer, when you see the old and the new characters all in one thing, and we didn't get that in the sequel trilogy. How do you not do the very to me, the very question that you would ask if you're going to make this, and you're going to have our new Star Wars characters and our old Star Wars characters. The thing I would say is, like, what is the moment where we're going to put all these characters together? They never gave us that. How can you not do that? That, to me, was the greatest failing of those movies. And there's many. But that was the greatest one. You do not get Luke, Han, Leia, R2-3PO, Lando, Chewbacca, Rey, BB-8, Kylo Ren, Finn, Poe Dameron. You don't get those characters all together working in the same frame, in the same scene. How can that not? How do you not do that? I don't know. It's weird. Anyway, folks, I do have to go walk the dogs. Elizabeth's going to be calling me going, where are you? So, Swag Prop says, Rob, while browsing through Netflix to see the next thing to binge on, I came across Manifest. Should I click play? Will I be entertained, or will I be wasting my life away? Oh, both. The great thing about Manifest is you'll be entertained and you'll be wasting your life away. It's a dichotomy. It's a mystery. And it's not a satisfying mystery at that, but you'll watch it dumbfounded. Especially if you get to the end of season 1, you'll be like, wait, what? What? Yeah, Manifest, the show that just keeps on giving nothing. But I dearly love it so. And on that note, I want to thank my moderators. I want to thank Darren Seeley. I want to thank Joshua Levesque. I don't know who else is here. Louise X. Sparrow is sleeping. Brian Hepburn is here moderating. I want to thank all you guys for moderating. I'm going to try and bring... everyone's mad at me that there's not enough Robservations. It's true, there's not. Tomorrow, by the way, if you're members of the channel, tomorrow there's a member call, but I had to push it until 3:30. Oh, and I just found out I can't... No, you know what? I got to figure this out. There's supposed to be a member call tomorrow. I'm going to see if I can have to push it till Sunday. I have to do 2 Designing Hollywood podcasts, and Roberto Suarez, who does them with me, can't do it. So there was going to be a member call tomorrow. We'll probably have to do it on Sunday. We can't do it Sunday because it's the Super Bowl. I have to figure this out. But anyway, there will be one. But anyway, on that note, I'm going to bring an end to Robservations episode number 788. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you for supporting the channel via super chats and tips. Thank you so much. Subscribe, like, watch the new issue of the new episode of the Designing Hollywood podcast. I am actually interviewing the creator, Doug. I don't know, Doug Ellen. I can't pronounce his last name. The creator of Entourage, which is going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to that tomorrow. That's going to be fun. So, yeah. Joe the Lawyer says, what one book would you recommend we read to learn how to tell a good story? Like a nonfiction book? I mean, Stephen King on writing is a great book. But in terms of a book that I recommend to read to learn how to tell a good story, I would just say, like, a book that, that's a hard thing to say because it depends what kind of a story that you want to see. You know what, though? I'll tell you something. There's a book, and I only read it once, but it's by a guy named Robert Goddard called Impale Battalions. It is not my usual bill of fare. But for whatever reason, I see it right up there. Impale Battalions. It's a period piece. And I read this book, and I'm like, God, I love this book. I mean, it's not science fiction, and I really, 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 really liked it. And in terms of telling it, I was just engrossed from the very beginning. And I'll tell you another book. It's a little weird. I mean, I don't know. I don't know why. Impale Battalions. That was another good book. I just loved it. And by the way, there's another great book by Michael Faber called The Book of Strange New Things. Michael Faber wrote Under the Skin, the science fiction movie that Scarlett Johansson was with. But that's, I mean, in terms of telling a story, you know, I think Sid Field's books about screenplay are great. Blake Snyder's Save the Cat. Those are books on writing. But I don't know if one book, it's hard to learn how to tell a good story. I mean, you know, I go back, I got to tell you, a good story, Stephen King's The Dead Zone. If you've seen the movie, you've only seen half the story. I remember reading The Dead Zone thinking, I am totally engrossed in this book. I was so engrossed in that book. I love that book. And that was a great story. But I don't know how to tell a good story. I mean, to me, what the best thing to learn, the thing that tells you about storytelling is pick your favorite. What is your favorite story? What are your favorite books and what are your favorite movies? And when I say favorite movies, I'm talking about movies that not like Star Wars, which are fun, but to me the difference, it's like find a movie that isn't necessarily your favorite genre. Like look to a different genre. Like if you love horror, if that's your favorite genre, find a movie that you love that isn't horror. Or look outside the genre, which is your normal bill of fare, and try and find a film that you truly love. Like one of my favorite movies in the world is Amelie, because it encapsulates my worldview, and it's not necessarily a movie. There's a whimsy to it that I wouldn't recommend to everyone. Normally, I don't go for stuff like that, but Amelie it's a brilliant movie, and Amelie has a scene in it. If it works for you, there's a scene where there's a man in a phone booth, and you'll know that scene. And there's that moment when something happens to him, very slight in terms of narrative, but every time I watch it, it gets me like right here. And if you're an Amelie fan, not a lot of people, I would not recommend Amelie to everybody, but for me, for whatever reason, my entire worldview is sort of wrapped up in this movie, and it wouldn't normally be the thing you'd think that it would be wrapped. My worldview would be wrapped up in, but Amelie is I don't know if that answers your question, Joe. But on that note, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. And with that, I would say to all of you, have a better night, have a better day, and remember, in the entire infinitude of the universe, there is only one. Only one. I know, multiverse theory, quantum, whatever. But in our universe right now, there's only one of you. In the entire infinitude of creation. Just one. Just one of you. That means all of us, each and every one of us, most valuable things in the universe. And I think we forget that too much. And I don't think we should. And on that note, let's. I'm going to leave you with this one more picture of Michael Burnham. I mean, come on, sneak where Martin Green's a beautiful woman, but she's always crying on this show. I don't understand why. Makes me sad.